Hi, I'm Lynnie Hutchinson and this is Brickpits Organic Farm. We came here in 1999. Before that, we'd been farming sheep on what we'd probably call privacy land, so people who had maybe a house, 10, 15 acres, and they'd maybe had horses or whatever, and their children had grown up, and now they wanted something done with the land, but didn't want to have to do it themselves. So we'd built our small sheep business up on other people's land, some rented, but most of it just in terms of we were keeping the grass down, topping it, keeping it good, repairing the fences for them in return for using the land. So we'd built our business up from that. And we started that because I needed a trained sheepdog, because I used to work in countryside conservation and I had sheep out grazing on SSSIs, nature reserves, places like that. And I needed a dog so that when people had let the sheep out of the electric fence, I could get them back in quite quickly.
Right.
So I got a few sheep to train a dog. And then once we trained the dog, it was like, well, I might as well land them now. And then it built up into a business. So it didn't really intend, neither me or my husband are from farming families. We didn't really intend to fall into sheep farming. That was something that we fell into.
Okay.
We were always farming organically, although not registered, but even when we were on the privacy land. And that was the way we wanted to farm. I wouldn't want to farm. It's just a personal choice, isn't it? But I wouldn't want to farm any other way.
Sure.
We'd always been quite environmentally conscious and that was just another step along that way. So we were always looking for the more conservation, environmentally orientated ways of farming and doing things, which in those days was maybe not so considered as it is now. Quite niche, but actually I think at the time I thought we had two disadvantages. One was that we were heading organic and most people didn't really understand what we were even talking about. And one was that we weren't from a farming background. And I now, on reflection, probably feel that they were both strengths because we went and helped loads of farmers, all sorts of farmers everywhere, asked loads of questions, probably drove them mad in those early days. We were really lucky in the early days in that when we bought the farm, we got a loan from an ethical bank, Triodos. So they've been amazingly supportive through the years. Every time a crisis hits in farming, they're on the phone. Is everything all right? What can we do to help? Do you need any support? How will this affect your business?
Amazing.
That sort of thing. When we were offered that second batch of land, we just rang them and went, well, we've been offered this land, but I don't know how we stand for increasing our loan. Is this going to run or not? And they just kind of came down on the back of an envelope, worked it out and went, well, if you default, we're quids in.
Sure.
So we'll loan it to you. Exactly. And
an
instant, a bank manager who came to the ground, understood organic farming, looked around, looked at our livestock and went, right, well, what we see here, if you go bankrupt, we'll be able to sell it all and make our money back. So I can justify that with a bank. Yeah, you can have it. That's one of the things I always say to the young farmers that we support when we start out is, actually someone said it to us at the beginning, and what's the worst thing that can happen? If you go bankrupt, it's a disaster and you start again and you have to go and work for someone else. If you never try,
you've got to give it a go.
Exactly. Farming's a hard game.
If you're passionate about it.
If you've got that passion, it's a hard game. You're not going to make a huge amount of money, but if that's the way you want to live,
it can be a great lifestyle.
It can be. And it's allowed me to do things like help at the local school when my children were young. I'm grown up now, but when they were young, be there for the end of term play or the whatever, run the gardening club, do all those things.
That's flexibility.
Because I'm self-employed, I can drop off and do a few hours at the school and then come back. I can run a visit for the school here and be part of that. Then growing up in a different way than perhaps you can if you've got a 9-to-5 job. Yeah. So if you want that lifestyle, you've got to give it a go, haven't you? So up till recently, we were both just full-time on the farm. Yeah. I now do some outwork for Whole Health Agriculture. Okay. And we've sort of increased the amount of grants and things we've gone through since, because of Brexit, obviously, and everything, and the BPS going. That's, for most small farms of this sort of size, that BPS payment, I think I read somewhere, was equivalent to most full farms' profit.
Oh my God. Okay.
So when the BPS went, and then, of course, there were going to be all these new grand schemes, some of which came and went, and then some of which were just, the rug was pulled, wasn't it, for some farmers. So things are pretty tight, but we found other grants elsewhere. Ian does a lot of hedge-laying, so we'll pull in a hedge-laying grant and he'll do all the work. I do some outwork. So and the meat boxes, we're very lucky. We're in a niche position in that we sell organic lamb boxes, organic beef boxes, so we get a better price than perhaps you would sitting at the market. So I mean, we do sell some in the market and we keep a balance, but well, we were running about 180 ewes. We've dropped that because of climate change down to about 150. Yeah. I just think everyone's got to accept that if the weather changes, drought,
you need
heavy
a bit
rain.
More resilience.
So we've got quite a lot of arable fields that are mostly in pasture, and we only sow 2 of them every year down to barley. Okay. So our arable rotation runs barley, and then when that comes off in the summer, we put stubble turnips in. and then that would go into barley again the following spring, and then it would sit as a herbal lay right round for about 5-6 years, because we can push it round the fields. So at any one time, most of our arable fields are in herbal lay, and then 2 of them will be in crop.
Yep.
So that has its disadvantages in that it's quite hard to get a combine for just 20 acres.
Yeah.
Depending on what your neighbours are doing and when the combine's coming to them. So we're on the clays and sandstones overlying. So we've got some fields like the front field out here. When you plough that, the bottom end of that is almost like a beach. It's sandy. As you plough it, it kind of slumps back down. That's one of the arable fields. And yet we've got an arable field, probably just 3 fields over, which when you plough it, there's a bit as you pull up through it, that's real thick, heavy clay, and the tractor's grunting. Do you know what I mean? So we've got both, which is handy because obviously in a drought year, the clay is holding some moisture for longer. In a really wet, sudden downpour, the sand is more useful, better for the feet, the animals, but of course that's overlaid by all your rotation of livestock. Big changes in terms of the rivers, so we've got a tributary to the Ouse that runs right through the farm down the bottom here, and we've got streams that run into that tributary, which always used to run all year, could be quite deep in the winter and then obviously shallower in the summer. 2 years ago, I think it was, for the first time, the tributary that runs to the Ouse there, the main tributary, got to the point where it was like a deep puddle, a little trickle, a deep puddle, and that's the first time we were running around trying to catch the fish and stick them in the water troughs and things to save them. That's the first time that's ever happened. And the tributaries, the little ones that run into that tributary, have got drier. You can hear sometimes water running underground, so the whole water table has dropped.
Yep.
So that's quite a concern, really, because if you've got crops and grass and livestock and things. It's hitting them harder. So part of it is their diet, in that the grass is obviously changing in a drought year. And then when rain comes, it's pretty intense. So it's not just the rain that we would have had before. It's a sudden, deep downpour of rain. But also the heat stroke's a real killer for sheep. So that's something that they really struggle with. So we've been doing a lot more of putting sol and belladonna in the troughs than I would have. Maybe if I look back 25 years, at the beginning, I probably hardly ever put sol or belladonna in the trough to guard against heat stroke. Now I would pretty much every summer be using that throughout the summer, and that's very hard to do something about. So because we planted all those hedges early on, all our fields have shade, and we still maintain big fields. So even we're in the High Weald, so when I say big fields, a field is 10 acres roughly. In the High Weald, it's not, we're not on the downs with an 80-acre field. We're in the High Weald, so a 10-acre field. And although this April, when we were turning out from lambing, we were like, right, it looks like it's going to be pretty dry. So we divided those fields up with electric fencing as an insurance policy. If it didn't become dry, we just lift that fence, let them have the whole field. But it just gave us time for that other grass to be growing on and then a control to move them over. But even so, that was probably still giving them a 5-acre block. The whole of the house was orientated south. That was a key part of the planning, which we had to fight for. The whole of this side of the roof isn't a roof, it is just solar panels. Like retrofit, this is just a solar roof. It provides pretty much the power. We have a backup generator. In winter, if you get a few really dull days, won't let the batteries, because obviously we have battery storage as well. It won't let the batteries drop low because it's protecting the batteries. So that was all part of it really for us, was that we wanted to tread lightly on the land. We need to live here in order to look after the livestock. I mean, living off site, and many people do, and we did it for years, is really hard. There's always that. I mean, we were in caravans and things at lambing, and with small children and all of that. It's just, it's hard. So I'm currently, I've always kind of thought, I like to know more about a disease problem, more about an issue, more, what can we do more for our livestock, things, and seeing what it is. And fly strike and internal parasites are probably the 2 biggest challenges, I think, to sheep, and it's in this area. And anything you can do to make that better is good. And be wrong, there are some very good chemicals out there that do a really good job. Found that niche, the insect growth regulators, in terms of not allowing that molt to the fat where it grows a mouth. So if it hasn't got a mouth, it can't eat the sheep. That's brilliant. But not many people bother to sit down and read the data sheets and realise what is the cost of those chemicals. And it's not that the companies hide anything. It's all there on the data sheet. It tells you shouldn't touch that animal for 8 weeks. And if you do, you should put gloves and everything on, and waterproof trousers and all of that. But I know that the harsh reality for all farmers, and I've done the same, is that you go in there, there's one limping, you whistle the dog, or you get your crook out, you catch her up, you treat her, whether that was 4 weeks, 2 weeks, 6 weeks or 8 weeks since you sprayed something on her, or even longer for some of the other things. You're doing what's best for that animal at that moment, and yet those chemicals are skin absorbable and you're holding them. That the commonly held practice, even though the data sheet tells you absolutely not to do that, is that if you've got a ewe with strike, you catch her up in the field, you clip off those maggots, whatever's in the chemical is in the truck, you tip that on the back of the animal and you rub that in with your hands. Now that's a skin absorbable chemical that you really shouldn't be doing that with, and the data sheet tells you what you should wear not to do that. And we know that that can affect people's mental health, it can affect people's immune system. So the challenge was to find something that worked as well, that is safe to do that with, because if you could say it's not fit for purpose, couldn't you? Because the purpose is that a shepherd goes out to a load of sheep in a field, is walking through them, finds one that's got a problem, catches it with a crook and deals with it. You don't then go back, get a whole load of protective clothing, come back out and grab that sheep up, because you're just going on to the next lot to check. So in terms of being fit for purpose, we wanted something that was a treatment that's fit for purpose. So what we did was, there's some research we found online that was showing that in a lab situation, tea tree oil at 20% was killing the eggs, the larvae and the pupae of the blowfly, Lucilla species. Because it's how do you get that to stick on the sheep. So he found us a carrier oil that would work really well with it, which is a base of vegetable fruit oils, and then added the tea tree into that. So we've been trialling that, and that's been really effective. So clipping out, obviously, a maggots, a patch, and putting that oil on, 20% tea tree oil in a carrier oil, pretty much the maggots don't like it, they curl up, and then we haven't seen further eggs or further fly attack on those patches. So that was something that's safe to touch with your hands, it's safe to rub in with your hands, it's something you can just have in a little sprayer in the truck or the quad or your bag or whatever, and so that's ideal. And the other one that we're trialling at that stage, repel from barrier hygiene, because if you spray that on, and one of the group has a sheep that has very thick fleece, so it's quite hard to detect, little with the teeth, knowing that it's got strike. Video of spraying that on the back end of a sheep, where if you looked at that fleece you probably wouldn't know, and all of a sudden the maggots coming out, they're like rats off a sinking ship, they hate it. So that's a really good one for using as a treatment, as well as to disguise the smell of the sheep and prevent the fly attack in the first place. So I think it's that being targeted about what you use when will become the future, but we've still to get to the end of the trial and then pile everyone's thoughts in. And also our thoughts were, it was important for us to collect data about how we could make it easier to use, or better for farmers to use.
And you hosted an event back in August, didn't you?
Yeah, so we hosted an event here back in August, and had farmers come in from a wide range of farms, again, with various sizes of flocks, to discuss all that, and to show so the farmers can kind of say how they found it so far, and those feedback some useful stuff back to the companies about how they could make it easier to use, or better. Hard thing for farms, isn't it? We've always said to our kids, we chose to farm, you choose your path. My son works in agricultural engineering. He's a contractor, so he does a lot of tractor driving during the season, and then engineering bits when things break down. But not here away. There isn't the money. Wish to be here. Unfortunately, we don't make enough to do that. And that's the trouble on a lot of small family farms. There isn't the money to then employ the next generation and move that on. My daughter, it's interesting, someone asked her, people always say, you're going to work on the farm when you grow older then? And with a wry smile, she kind of went, yeah, I'd like a life first. I wouldn't mind it later on. And I think that's an acknowledgement too, isn't it? That if you grow up on a farm, you see how hard that life is, and how much that, whilst it can give you a lot, it can give you the flexibility and the freedom and things like that, there is always that moment when you're going out to do something and something happens and everything has to drop and you have to get on and deal with whatever the situation is. Farmers are ultimately resilient and amazing. All farmers, I find, are amazing at, if there's a problem or a nightmare or an issue, you probably want a farmer with you, because they will just go, right, let's get on with this, we need to sort that out, how's that going to work, let's do that. Pretty much problem solving is what they do 24/7 all the time, especially on small farms where you have to do everything and you don't have a big lot of staff. That's a really good question, isn't it? I think we need information and the flexibility to adapt to climate change. And at the moment, farms like us are having to go out, try and make contact with farms in countries south of us where that's already hitting those problems, try and preempt things and get ahead. And could be done by DEFRA maybe. And there's a lot of politics in farming, isn't there? That's the trouble. And there's no long-term strategy. You know, the strategy needs to move to something that's for the good of the planet and the good of everybody's health. And understanding that link between what we eat and how it's grown, you know, is so important. So those net zero programs and things coming down, I'd love to have the time to do some sort of climate change analysis on this farm, some benchmarking, some things like. I looked at one of those programs that comes through. There's loads of them available to farmers. I need about 2 weeks to input the initial data. I don't have 2 weeks. I'm going to get a t-shirt that says I'm too busy farming, because the trouble is I'd love to do all those things. I'm a farmer who wants to look behind all of that, who wants to get that research, who wants to know more, do better. But actually my day-to-day takes up quite a lot and there's not much spare room, and I'm trying to do what I can. But on the other hand, some of those landscape schemes have really saved farmers and helped hold the gap when everything fell through with the other schemes that were supposed to come along. We were supposed to be able to all, and they pulled the rug under all of those other things and left people financially in a quandary. Through a lot of the things like farming in protected landscapes and things like that, a lot of farmers were able to go, well, maybe I can get a little bit of money from this and that will help keep my farming business going. Maybe I can apply for this grant here and that will help me with that aspect. Maybe I can patch together something from there. So some of those things have really helped, but I'm not sure that was what was quite intended by them. And it probably does deliver those landscape goals, otherwise they wouldn't be giving those grants, would it? But it's a kind of backroom way of keeping small farms going.
It's patching it, isn't it?
It's a patch. It doesn't feel, I see it all around me. We're constantly aware, keeping an eye on other farmers, checking in with people. I think we're really lucky. When we first came here, farming, it sort of seemed to be in, like back 25 years ago, I guess I'm saying, is organic farmers were quite used to working collaboratively, supporting each other, and that was a really good way to come into farming. And I'd see amongst some other farmers that they'd be quite sort of maybe closed and not competitive, but sort of competitive in a way, not wanting to share stuff. I think that's changed massively over 25 years, and I see loads of projects that are about farmers sharing, and I just think that is really valuable and really the way to go. And I just think now around us here, we're really lucky. We have a brilliant farming community around us. We all farm in different ways, but I know for a fact that if I'm in the middle of harvest, or we're haymaking or something, and it's happened to us, it's broken on a tractor, you've got threatening rain, it's dark, you've still got a couple of hundred bales to get in, we can go up the road, borrow a tractor, come back down, finish our job. They'll probably come and help us finish it. And we would do the same for them. There's a kind of unwritten rule, which I guess was always sort of there in farming, but we saw it in the early days, maybe more in the organic side of the movement, that if you've got yours in, but there's rain coming in, your neighbour's lights are still on, and you might be dog tired and it still might be 10 o'clock at night, you dig in, take some food with you, you go and help them and you get on. You don't leave someone else to struggle. And that is still quite strong in this area, but I know in some areas it's not. And I think the realisation and some of the organisations that have brought that maybe to the fore have woken up people and made it a bit more acceptable for people to go, maybe I should call on that neighbour that I haven't seen for a while, maybe I should just check that they're all right, wave over the gate, say hello, because I think there's a lot, farmers are facing a lot of challenges. Climate change, the inheritance tax changes, the lack of BPS, which has wiped out a lot of farms' profits. Everything is eating away, a lot of regulation, all the recent things. So those people who do employ someone recently have come under massive financial hits with the changes, and we want to be able to employ people. If I could afford to employ someone, I would want them to be on the living wage. I would want them to be having a good salary and reasonable benefits. So it's not that we don't want that, it's just that affording that has put a lot of pressure onto some farms, and they've had to let some people do less hours or go because of that, and that's really horrible if you've had someone working for you for years. And there's a lot of farms where the older generation can't afford to retire to let the younger generation then come and take an income from the farm, so that's hard too. And having those conversations is important, I think, and helping other farmers to have those conversations, to chat to people. And There's a lot of local groups and things. There's a little local vintage tractor club round here, and they meet up and chat, and some of them are farmers, some of them aren't, but it's just having a social. Farming can be quite socially isolating. You can be on your own a lot of times, and the only thing you've spoken to for weeks is sheep or cattle, which is lovely, they're great, but sometimes it's nice to speak to another human. And I think we're really lucky because we deliver meat direct to our customers, and I write them a little thing every 3 weeks when I'm sending who wants to order next. We get a lot of feedback from our customers, and actually I've noticed that some of them have now started to check in and say, how are things going on the farm? You read this in the press, is that really so? And that's, having support back from your customers is really good, and we get that because we do direct meat sales. If you're a farmer who's just loading them on a lorry and thinking, oh, I've done all right, and then you get your bit of paper back and they've downgraded you for that and the other so that they can save a bit of money because they're trying to make a living, that's quite a hardening thing to sit and read, isn't it? And then you're stuck on your own with no one to relate to or come back to about that. So I think there is a big mental health issue amongst farmers, partly because they're isolated, partly because it's long hours and hard graft, and partly because the future doesn't look very bright. There's a lot of challenges out there, and it doesn't feel like there's much support or much realisation from government that we need to. Farming's important. It's important for food and nutrition and health. Go for it. If you've got a passion, if you've got a natural, I can usually, when people come and they do a little bit with the livestock, you can tell pretty well whether they've got a natural ability with livestock, whether we've had people who've come from London or have come from, you might live in the country but never be close to animals. People have this kind of idea sometimes that, oh, well, they're country kids, they should know, you can get in the car and go to school every day and back and never really come into contact with animals. So when someone comes and says, oh, I'm thinking about this, if they've not come from that sort of background or haven't managed to get any experience, you can pretty soon tell. And I always, when people say, I say, if you come for a week's lambing, by the end of that you'll know A, whether you can cut it, B, whether you like livestock and you can handle things, and you'll have seen the good and the bad of, because let's face it, if you have livestock, unfortunately sometimes you do have dead stock, and you've got to be able to deal with that as well. That's a bit like being a vet, isn't it? And you only see sick animals, and that can be quite depressing too, and quite a mental health situation. So there is that side to it. So for young entrants, if you've got a passion for it, if you're keen for it, go somewhere, try, volunteer, to get a bit of a feeling for whether it is for you or not. There's a lot of, wouldn't it be lovely to work with animals? Go and try it, really get in at the deep end, get your boots muddy, get your hands dirty, and then go, is this for me? And if it is for you, then work. It's hard work, you're never going to make a million, but, well, I guess a few people do, but generally, if it's what you love and what you do, it's what you want out of life, isn't it? If you want a lifestyle that is out in the fresh air, where you can make a difference, then that's amazing. But get your experience, and there are 101 ways into it. Don't feel like you've just got to, especially at the moment, there's a lot of people getting into it who are going and they're looking at the agricultural colleges, and some people are going, that's really for me, I want that college experience as much as I want to learn the livestock kind of bit, and that's great and right for them. And there are other people who look at those and then go, oh, I don't know now. Don't be put off by that, because there are other ways of getting into farming. And there are lots of people doing it through other ways of getting into farming. We came to farming late. We learnt by helping other farmers. In return for they gave us their knowledge and welcomed us and showed us how to do things in return for our hard work. So there are other ways of doing it.
Lastly, what do you think of Clarkson's farm?
I'd never seen it until my children showed me some bits of it. We don't get TV signal here, so we watch stuff on iPlayer and things, and we don't have a lot of time to watch telly, to be honest. We do other things. So I did see some of it when we were with our kids, and I think in a way he's brought a whole load of people to farming and to the reality of farming. I know it's hammed up for the cameras a bit, but he makes a lot of rookie mistakes which you can relate to, and other farmers have, or we've all made mistakes, haven't we? That's part of the learning. And I think it's brought a lot of people to farming or to watch farming that wouldn't have otherwise come to that because of who he is. They've watched it and then actually quite got into it. And I think that's no bad thing, really. People connecting with where their food comes from, with the harsh realities of how it is to farm. Yeah. We watch the bit where they go through the crops and then they get to the end and he goes, is that all I've made? And that is quite often the harsh reality of it. Yeah. Farming's a long game, and you have good and bad years, and quite often you have a run of bad years, and then you might have a good year, and you have to think what you're in it for. So I think in a way he's brought a whole generation to, or several generations, because lots of people watch it, don't they, for different reasons, to farming, and maybe encourage some kids to have a think about it and have a go at it that wouldn't have otherwise. So
great.
Yeah.
Perfect.